Forge, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to take and show you how to take and make this very handy leaf making jig. This is a jig that I made in class, one of my very first classes I ever took on a formal education for blacksmithing at Touchstone Center for Crafts, by a guy, an instructor by the name, a real great guy by the name of Wayne Apgar. He kind of showed me how he made some of his tooling and stuff, and I actually made this in class. This is what we're going to make today. I'm going to make this project, not a leaf. If you want to see how to make a leaf, you can go to, I'll put the link in the description down below, and at the end of this video there'll be a clip to making a leaf. This is a handy jig and tool to make a leaf, as you've seen in the previous clip. It just kind of helps speed up production. So today this is what we're going to make, and I'm going to take you step by step through the process. Enjoy. Alright, first thing I'm going to take and do here is I'm going to explain a few of the main components and why this jig is laid out exactly the way it is. Let's see if I can explain this the best I can. Find a little pointy stick here so you can see my big fat fingers. The size of these hoops do not matter. They're just essentially they're relative to the size leaves you anticipate creating. So don't get hung up on sizes in this video. They're just for general reference only. I do not know what I even wrapped these around or what I did with them to actually make these particular loops, what size it was. I could probably figure that out real quick with a ruler. I think I went around 1 1/4 piece of section of pipe to make this ring, and I went around 1 3/4 or a 2-inch section of pipe to make this ring. So this is probably 1 1/2. This is probably 2, and then the rings were closed a little bit after they had been wrapped. I'll show a little different method of getting at the same result without having a section of pipe, but that's the easiest way to do it. You can do it around the horn of the anvil. Once again, this really doesn't matter, the size here. The point of this is so this way you can get in at the curvatures of your leaf. And it's a lot easier than doing it on the horn. It allows you to get into like little tight areas and support the work as you're working on it on various other ends. This accommodates for 2 different leaves. You don't have to do that. You could just have 1 loop on it and maybe a base plate, or maybe no base plate at all, and just have just the loop welded to your hardy shank, and it's just like a cupping tool to help make things like that. This can also be used to dish small projects like candle cups, things like that, out of flat plate material. It's just a handy overall tool to take and use. So this point here, as we went over the rings, those are for bending the radius of your leaves around. This center section here, this is for being able to fold a leaf, or be able to create that a folded leaf, and that it's just a particular style of leaf. This here was cut in with an angle grinder. We'll go out over that. Again, this size is all relative to the size leaves that you're wanting to do. This one here happens to be 2 inches wide by about 3 inches long. It can be whatever you have on hand at the point. On the back, I've got a 1-inch hardy shank welded to the back here. And as you can see, these loops here are welded on the back side as well as the front, but we grind down the front side a little bit. That way we don't have a nasty weld up here impeding our work. So, once again, size relative. If you've got a 3/4 inch hardy hole, make it 3/4. If you don't have a hardy hole at all, make a stem or a plate that you can lock in the vise like you saw in the beginning clip of this video. It's handy either way. I actually like using this tool more in the vise than I do on the surface of my anvil. It just seems like it bounces around a little less, but you can do what you want with it. So that's the main components that make this jig up. Some of you guys who could probably take off hit the ground running with just that much information. And good luck to you. And I thank you for watching the video this far. For the rest of you that would like to have the in-depth explanation, stick around. We're going to go over each little part, making and fabricating. So, once again, thanks for watching, and let's get to it. Alright, the only requirement that I would say is for this tool is for these round rings is to make them out of 1/2 inch or larger diameter material, cross section. And the other thing is I do not like using a solid steel hammer to make my rings. I like using a wooden hammer, either a wooden hammer or mallet. Here, trying to get you all into focus here where you're focusing on the right part where I'm going to be. Hold on a second, sorry. Darn working by yourself. There we go. Now we're on the tip, I think. Yeah, there we go. Alright, the main thing is I like to use is a wooden mallet. And I like bringing my stuff to high heat. We want to keep this round. We don't want to have to sand it round afterwards. We don't want a bunch of hammer marks in it. We just want to bend this material around so we're not forging. And I think this will demonstrate this to you quite well. So the first step is we're going to hit right out on the tip. This being 1/2 inch material, you want to work it the tip first and work it hot. And here again, dropping the tongs here. This is a wooden hammer. As you can see, all we're trying to do is get this to bend around. Our horn here. Okay, so the next heat will come out of the fire, and I'll keep bringing this right on around and just past. And the reason why you want to come just past is we will cut it off, and then you will have a perfect seam that way. If you just come out like this, it's going to be awful hard to get this part to bend to match, and then you're dealing with a ring and trying to shape it. If you just coil this right on around to where it passes it up, and then you cut it in half, you get a perfect ring out of the deal, and you don't have to fight it a whole lot. So that's what we'll do. I'll finish this out, and then I'll go to the vise, and I will cut that off with an angle grinder. I'll show you what that looks like, so this way you can see the concept that I'm going for there. So, as you can see, once again, we are not using a metal hammer. We're using a wooden mallet. It could be any wooden mallet. This is just something I rigged up out of a fence post material. And, you know, there's no hammer blows. There's no hammer marks on this. It's a good way of making chain links or anything else. I might shoot a video on actually doing forge welded chain at some point. I use soft base hammers for that. You know, not everything has to be this hardened tool that leaves marks all over your work. You know, so just a method of thought or thinking here. So, anyways, next clip, we'll be at the vise. Here we are at the vise. So first thing I want you all to take a notice is, and I'm going to point out, is look how clean that is. There's no hammer marks. That's what we want. So that's just the first thing I'm going to point out. If you also noticed, I took it just past the rod, almost like making a coil spring. So, and if you look at the interior diameter, it's almost a perfect circle. Almost. I'm not a machine, so get over it. Next thing what we're going to do is we're going to cut down straight through both pieces of material in a straight line. And where we're going to do that is where the end of this radius runs out and where the end of the other radius runs out. That's where we're going to make our cut line. When we make our cut line down through there, then we will have two halves that are kind of just missing each other just by a little bit. Just by a little bit. We'll heat it up in the forge with the wood hammer. Just give it a tap, and we've got ourselves a perfect ring. So this is really handy for a multitude of projects. So keep this in the memory banks. As if you do blacksmithing for a long time, you'll be called on to do this quite a bit with just various projects. It's just a handy method to figure it out. Real quick before I forget, and I didn't mention in the other one how much material I heated up to make this. Once again, it's all relative, but a good formula that I have figured out through making a bunch of stuff where I need to wrap things is a good rule of thumb is it takes 4 1/4 inches of material stock to wrap 1 inch in diameter. So it takes 4 1/4 linear inches of material to wrap 1 inch in diameter. So just a rule of thumb there, so you know it'll be 8 1/2 inches for for a 2-inch rod. It'll take nearly 8 1/2 inches of linear material to wrap that 2-inch round. So if you're short on supplies, or you want to know exactly so you can just cut it off and bend it, I suggest leaving it on a bar like you see here. It makes it easier, or even a longer bar. But if you're going to your scrap pile, you're looking, you're saying, hey, I don't know whether this will be long enough to make this project. That's just a general rule of thumb. Sometimes it works out plus or minus 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. It usually works out to where it's a little more than using the pie method. Doing the actual calculations for pi and everything else to figure out what you need. It usually gives you a little more material, but as I said, I'd rather have more material than not enough so I can cut it off and make a perfect fit. So I'll go ahead and cut this off now. For those of you that are listening through earbuds or anything like that, turn your volume down. I'll give you a thumbs up whenever I'm done cutting. Obviously you should see it when it's safe for you to crank the volume back up. So here we go. And there you have it. Nothing to it. Let me find a pair of tongs here to grab this with. There you are. Nothing to it. So we'll heat this up and knock those two ends together. Now if you can see them there, let me swing around here, look at the camera. Yeah, we'll just knock those two ends together and you'll have a ring. So this is making one. I'll do the other one off camera. Not much to see. I'll do it exactly the same way. I'll just make it a little bigger by using a little fatter section of the horn of the anvil. That'll have your rings made. We'll move on. Alright folks, here we are. So I got a large ring and a small ring bent up out of 1/2 inch steel. 1/2 inch round mild steel. So got those done. Now it's time to take and work on our center bit, or this portion here. So the one I made in class was just a piece of 3/16 inch plate that I found in the scrap bin to make this. This little groove, as you see, and this notch in it. But as you can see, it's pretty thin there. So the best ideal is to go with a much thicker plate. This one that we're using here is just a little over 3/8 inch thick plate. I would suggest that or 1/2 inch thick steel. This just happens to be 2 inches wide, and I went ahead and cut off a section of the bar 3 inches long. So I use an angle grinder a lot for a lot of my thicker cutting. Just seems to be as handy as anything. The only thing it does produce, though, I don't know if you can see that on the camera there, is it produces this little rag here. I don't know if you can see it right there. Those are sharp. Always get rid of those. Whenever you're working on something like this or you're doing any sort of fabrication work, it just takes a second for this to drop. You try to grab it and it cuts your hand. So always use caution, be safe with your stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to grind off this rag and we are going to make this groove. And how we're going to get about making this groove is at first we're going to start by grinding in a line with a cutoff wheel. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave us like a straight line that we can follow with our angle grinder then. So I'll see if I can't get all that in the shot. I'll get this all jigged up to where I got it locked securely to the table just for filming purposes. The better option is to actually put this in the vise, which, you know, I actually, come to think about it, let's do that. I'll move my whole setup over to the vise. I'll get this locked securely in the vise, and then we'll go to grinding, and I'll show you how that goes about. But as you can see, we're getting pretty close. We'll essentially, we will essentially get that done, and then that'll get welded up, and essentially you will have this then, which is going to be a pretty nice little tool. I probably won't, I'll see if I can get a neat welding shot. Maybe we'll include that in the video. Just kind of boring, not much to look at other than a guy standing over his weld bead that he's welding, but you know, it gives you a sense or a feel of what's going on anyhow. So, all right, well, we'll grind this line in the next clip, and we'll go from there. All right, folks, this is going to get loud. I'm using a cutoff wheel on my 5-inch angle grinder, Bosch angle grinder. I'm going to take and grind just right down the center of this, almost like you're trying to cut it in two, but we're not. We're just wanting to make a shallow groove that we can follow with our flat disc easily. So that's all we're trying to accomplish there. After I get that, I will go ahead and grind off that burr a little bit when I go to do the flat disking and clean it up, make it look prettier. If you'll notice, I've got this slightly set to where it's just slightly proud of my vice jaws. That way, as I'm sanding along, I'm not eating into my vice jaws, just to help protect those. So go ahead and turn down your volume now, and I'll give you the thumbs up when it's okay to turn it back up. Here we go. Alright, we're not trying to go real deep. This here is about a 1/16 of an inch in. You probably don't want to go any more than an 1/8 of an inch on 3/8 inch plate. You just need a shallow groove. It doesn't need to be a real deep groove to take and form the leaves, to fold form the leaves that way. With a fold form leaf, I might show you in another video how to do a fold form leaf with doing that process. Essentially, you know, you're going to fuller it down to where it starts to bend and then fold over the leaf and hammer it out from there. So you don't really need this really deep, just enough to get a start or for your chisel to find its groove. So we're done with that. I'll change up my setup with a flat disc there. Clean this up and I'll show you how we groove this out then. Alrighty, we're going to make this loud again. So, I'm using a 36 grit flat disc from Harbor Freight, consumable. Max rating is 13,300 RPMs. We're not spinning nearly that quick. And what we're going to do is we are going to hold your angle grinder at a bevel and create a bevel this side. And we're going to flip it around and create a bevel this side and down to the bottom of that cut. And that's essentially it for this groove. So I'll go ahead and flip her on here. So go ahead and turn that volume down. I'll give you the thumbs up when we're ready. so you can see we widened that cut now quite a bit. It's nice and straight, and it's all the way to the bottom of the groove. We got a nice V in it now, and that's really all that's needed. One quick tip, if you give me just 1 second, I'll be right back. One quick tip, as I've shown in another video, I use sandpaper. Once again, this is just 80 grit sandpaper. There's a little trick here that I want to show you real quick. You take your sandpaper, you rip it off your roll, and then you rip it lengthwise into smaller strips. And what these smaller strips can do is they can get in areas that is otherwise cumbersome by files or things of that nature. But what we want to do is we don't want this nice and square and sharp. We don't want that at all. We actually want to take and radius these a little bit from the front and back. And on the sides, we want this to have a little bit of a radius going into that groove. The reason for that being is say you got a piece of hot metal and you go whack it down in here and your chisel's not quite the right fit, you're going to shear off the material, or you're going to leave cut marks on the back side of your workpiece. So I just strip off a piece, set it in the groove, and give it a little sanding like this. This is quick and easy. I would say this thing's probably, this strip is maybe 1/4 inch, maybe a heavy 5/16 of an inch strip off that sandpaper. If it breaks or wears out on you, I don't know if you can see that radius starting there. Let me come over here. Oh, looks like it. Kinda. Anyways, that right there smooths up that joint without you trying to fidget with an angle grinder or something, get it in there, maybe take out too much material. But if the paper wears out, it's easy enough. You just rip you another strip. A lot of material there. Once again, this helps. This helps in the long run when you're wanting to make leaves on here. Like I said, we don't want any of them sharp lines cutting up our material. So, the next clip in this, so we'll go ahead and, I'll go ahead and get this welded up because this will be pretty much done. So, I just keep this nice and clean. That slot's nice and clean now. Those are radiused, those edges are radiused. Nice and clean. It's cooled down a little bit too, so that's a plus. Let's see if I can't get you a little better view of what we got going on there. Alrighty guys, here we are. Sorry about the other clip, I got cut off there towards the end about getting the refocus thing. But you can see a little bit of the radius there on the edge as we got it all nice and cleaned up. Nice V groove. Now we're going to go ahead and weld this up. So I'll go ahead and clip again, and I'll come back with the next shot you'll see is me welding. So there's no particular way of doing this. I like turning my lines here, the open ends, if you will, of those two loops. I like putting them in, and I like welding those in. Obviously, it takes care of two operations at once. Don't get a lot of weld up here on top. It's not needed. We're just trying to weld it to this plate, and we'll flip it over and weld it again. There's all sorts of great videos on how to weld stuff square. I can do a video specifically on welding at a later date if there's any interest in that. Otherwise, there's a slew of videos on YouTube. If you're watching this video, hey, maybe you already know how to weld, and that's cool too. So, so next clip, I'll go ahead and weld these in, and then we'll move on to our attachment method, or however we're going to take and put this. This particular one, I'm going to go ahead and just set up so this way it fits in the vise and just locks into the vise jaws. So it'll be a pretty simple rig, nothing special. But I already got one that fits in the hardy hole just fine. I already like it to go into the vise, so I'm just going to make it to fit the vise. You could, like I said, you could do whatever you want with yours. Just cut a section of square bar and weld it on the top, weld it on the bottom of it, or you can cut a piece of heavy angle iron or just a straight bar. That's what I'm going to do for this particular one here. But I'll show you that in the final clip, and we'll get going. Alright, I got it all rigged up and grounded to the table, ready for welding. I'll go ahead and tack this front side first on both hoops in the corners here, and then I'll flip it and tack it from the back side, and hopefully that'll even out this thing wanting to take and contract or cool one way or the other and pull it all out of square. Right now it's nice and flush and the way I want it. I want to keep it that way, so the ideal on this is to work pretty quick. So just, you know, go to town, tack it up, don't spend a lot of time, flip it over, and go again. So here we go. Alright, we got that all tacked up. That should hold it nice and square. What I'll do first is I will actually weld this back side first, all the way across, take a bead, and then I'll come back and later on I'll weld this front side after we've welded on this back piece. If it's going to bow one way or the other, I'd rather it bow to where it's pointing down, arching that way. You can always beat it flat and get a nice flat thing that way. If it bows the opposite way, you have to bend it out, and then you can take a chance of breaking the welds. So that's why I come back and do these after I get the back bar attached. But we're going to go ahead and weld this back side all the way up. That way if it pulls one way or the other, it pulls in the correct direction. So here we go, taking a bead. So, as you can see, I'm no professional welder. I do know how to stick things together. No real profession here at welding. I can make stuff weld and stay together. Pretty much glue it in the spot. There's a lot of guys a lot better than I am. But hey, what do you do when you teach yourself? So, anyways, I'll go cut a section of bar. Then I'll come back and I'll cut in and show you how I weld that across, and then we'll go from there. Alrighty, the only trick on this back bar here is to make sure it's, you know, it's square with the piece. You don't want it to be tilted one way or the other. You want it to take and make sure you keep it nice and square with the piece as you tack it in. Tack it from one end, tack it from the other, and then go ahead and put as much weld on it as you like. I like to weld it out here on these edges, and then leave the center alone. That way, you know, I mean, I don't really need it in the center, but you mainly just need it tacked weld good enough that it won't come off there in use. I'm just doing a simple bar method in order so it can be locked in the vise. So we'll tack it from both ends, that way it don't move around on us, and then finish welding it up. Alrighty, that's all that's needed on it. So, go ahead and shut off the welder, unclamp it here, and now that should hold everything nice and straight. So there's the finished product. Now we can take and use it however you like. You can weld these in so they look a little more attractive if you like. If you weld them in, you may have to grind it down. That way it's a little smoother for you, just for appearances. But you get the ideal. So, anyways, guys, appreciate you watching the video this long. Hope this tool holder helps. Like I said, it's very nice to take and get into some small reach areas to form these leaves a lot quicker than having to play over the horn. You can have this locked in the vise. You can very quickly make your leaf, go over, form it real quick, and they get a lot of repeatability or repeatability. They're all the same. You know, in a future video, I'll do a fold form leaf using this tool. Just to kind of show you how handy that section there is at making leaves and whatnot. If you get any weld sputter or whatnot on your piece, just give it a good wire wheel, and it'll get all that junk off of there. That way, it's not into your final products. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. God bless you all. You have a great day. Hit that like or subscribe button if you like to see more of these videos. We'll talk to you later.